Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Hey, Catholic pilgrims, it's another day, and I'm glad to have you back with me for the 12th day of reading from St. Faustina's diary. We have a lot to read today, so I'm going to jump right in. Today's readings are from numbers 31 through 35, and today's readings are kind of jump all over the place. So I have a lot of things I want to talk about. It's not all completely fluid. It's definitely more like reading daily entries in a diary instead of a couple days of fluid thoughts. So that's why I want to jump right in because we got a lot to talk about. So here we go. Once I saw a big crowd of people in our chapel, in front of the chapel and in the street, because there was no room for them inside. The chapel was decorated for a feast. There were a lot of clergy near the altar, and then our sisters and those of many other congregations. They were all waiting for the person who was to take a place on the altar. Suddenly I heard a voice saying that I was to take the place on the altar. But as soon as I left the corridor to go across the yard and enter the chapel, following the voice that was calling me, all the people began to throw at me whatever they had to hand: mud, stones, sand, brooms, to such an extent that I at first hesitated to go forward. But the voice kept on calling me even more earnestly, so I walked on bravely. When I entered the chapel, the superiors, the sisters, the students, and even my parents started to hit me with whatever they could. And so whether I wanted to or not, I quickly took my place on the altar. As soon as I was there, the very same people, the students, the sisters, the superiors, and my parents, all began to hold their arms out to me, asking for graces. And as for me, I did not bear any grudge against them for having thrown all sorts of things at me. And I was surprised that I felt a very special love precisely for those persons who had forced me to go more quickly to my appointed place. At the same time, my soul was filled with ineffable happiness, and I heard these words: "Do whatever you wish, distribute graces as you will, do to whom you will, and when you will." Then instantly the vision disappeared. Another time I heard these words: "Go to the superior and ask her to allow you to make a daily hour of adoration for 9 days. During this adoration, try to unite yourself in prayer with my mother. Pray with all your heart in union with Mary, and try also during this time to make the way of the cross." I received the permission, though not for a full hour, but only for whatever time was left me after I had carried out my duties. I was to make this novena for the intention of my motherland. On the 7th day of the novena, I saw, between heaven and earth, the Mother of God clothed in a bright robe. She was praying with her hands folded on her bosom, her eyes fixed on heaven. From her heart issued forth fiery rays, some of which were turned toward heaven while the others were covering our country. When I told this, and certain other things, to my confessor, he replied that these might really be coming from God, but that they might also be an illusion. Because of my frequent changes of assignments, I did not have a permanent confessor, and besides, I had great difficulty in speaking of these things. I prayed ardently that the Lord would give me that great grace, that is, a spiritual director. But my prayer was answered only after my perpetual vows, when I went to Vilnius. The priest was Father Sapotsko. God had allowed me to see him in an interior vision even before I came to Vilnius. Oh, if only I had had a spiritual director from the beginning, then I would not have wasted so many of God's graces. A confessor can help a soul a great deal, but he can also cause it a lot of harm. Oh, how careful confessors should be about the work of God's grace in their penitent souls. This is a matter of great importance. By the graces given to a soul, one can recognize the degree of its intimacy with God. Okay, so I want to talk about the very first part. it's kind of interesting when you first read it. You're like, what is going on here? She's at church and she's being called to the altar and people are throwing things at her. And then you realize that she is having a vision of what it's like for Christ. You know, constantly, all day, every day, God is sinned against. Harsh words are said against him. He's mocked. He's made fun of. He's, abused in sacrilegious ways. And, but still, when God looks at all of us, even though we sling all these horrible things at him who gives us our life and all our blessings, he still loves us. And he still wants to give us graces and wants to give us blessings. And, we heap all these horrible things on Christ, and then we turn around and are like, why aren't you blessing me? And I had a priest one time, I went to a conference, and he said, when we sin, it's like we hold an umbrella over our heads. God is constantly wanting to pour down graces upon us, and he constantly is pouring down graces on us, but sin blocks the graces because it distances our heart from God. And so we don't even feel the graces, we don't recognize the graces, or we just don't accept them. I thought that was a really good analogy. But what Sister Faustina is seeing here is what Christ goes through all the time, and yet he still loves us. All that we do that's wrong and horrible to him, he still wants to draw us to him, to distribute graces, and he still has a special love for us. So it's a very interesting insight that she gets there. The second part I want to talk about is he tells Sister Faustina to pray with his mother, with Mary. And when I was first coming into the Catholic Church, the idea of including Mary in my spiritual life was it just wasn't something I was that interested in. I knew when I became Catholic that involving Mary was way more important to Catholics than the Protestant denominations I had been involved in growing up. But it just felt very unnatural because growing up, it was just about a relationship with Jesus. Nobody else was involved. And so calling on Mary for anything was weird and felt kind of awkward. And I think this is the case for a lot of converts, because it's not something that you're used to. It's not something that you grow up with. And so it takes some time to kind of feel that out as a part of your spiritual life. And I've been Catholic for almost 11 years now. And each year I feel closer and closer and closer to Mary, and I call on her more. And I think it's such a beautiful thing that we have in the Catholic Church, the communion of saints. The body of Christ is not limited to just me and Jesus. It's all of us together. And Mary she is at the pinnacle of the saints. And she's Christ's mother. And we're all a family. And it makes sense to include everybody in the family in your spiritual life, especially the mom, And so, if you're struggling to include Mary in your spiritual life, I think that's pretty normal and common, especially if you're a convert. But, I would just encourage you to see the different parts of Christ's life through her eyes, because she was there for so much of it. And, as a mom myself, seeing through her eyes what her child is going through just really hits home for me, especially when she's at the foot of the cross. But all she wants to do is draw us closer to her son. So it's so important that we, if nothing else, at least acknowledge her importance and her role in all of this, in our salvation drama, basically. The last thing I wanted to touch on was something that brought my mind back to my pilgrimage in January of last year. He tells Sister Faustina to make the way of the cross. When I was in Jerusalem, one morning, we got up very, very, very early because we wanted to walk the way of the cross before the town woke up. And part of the way of the cross runs through the Muslim quarter in the heart of Jerusalem. There's a Christian quarter, a Muslim quarter, an Armenian quarter, and a Jewish quarter. And part of the way of the cross runs through the Muslim quarter. Our guide wanted us to get up early before, everybody was out and about and opening up their shops and everything. So we got there when it was still dark outside. I think it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And it's very old looking, cobbled stones. You've got these really old buildings around you. The night, it was still nighttime outside, or dawn was just getting ready to break anyway. And we all stood there and we started making the way of the cross. And I wish I could describe in words how that made me feel. As we stopped at each station and would continue on to the next one, we would all sing very quietly, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Man, it still gives me chills. Just thinking about it, it almost makes me cry. Because it was thinking about Christ on that way and what he did for us was truly, truly one of the greatest moments of my life. Not because I like the fact of what he went through for us, but just the fact that he went through it for us. And I just really tried to place myself on those passageways as we wound our way to the Holy Sepulchre, to the tomb of Christ. I just tried to imagine him carrying that heavy cross and Veronica there and just the crowd taunting him. And it was a heartbreaking but truly beautiful moment. And I wish every Christian could do that at least once in their life because it's just so powerful. And at the end of the walking the way of the cross, you end up at the tomb, this massive Holy Sepulchre, which encloses the tomb of Christ, and also Golgotha, the hill that Christ died on, is inside of this massive building. And we showed up there, and you kind of entered this courtyard, and it was still dark outside, but the door to the Holy Sepulchre was open, and it's very old looking, and just this orange glow was coming from it, and there's these lanterns hanging there. And it was so, I don't even know how to describe it. It was unreal. It was supernatural. It was just amazing. And I wish I could describe it in better words, but when he asked her to make the way of the cross, that really just came to my mind. And I wanted to share that with you because I know not everybody can get to the Holy Land and experience that, but making the way of the cross was just, I truly tried to put myself there with what Christ was going through. And it's changed how I prayed the rosary. It's changed how I read Christ's passion and everything. It just, the appreciation doesn't even seem like a big enough word, but just the gratitude I felt as I walked along there, and tears would fall, and it was just beautiful to know that we are that loved is absolutely beautiful. So I would take that with you today, Catholic pilgrims, as you go throughout your day. Make your own way of the cross and be reminded of what Jesus did for us, carrying all of our burdens and all of our sins up to Calvary, all for us. So I will see you here tomorrow, Catholic pilgrims, for day 13. And until next time, live the faith boldly and travel well.